Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. Today we're sticking to a theme. We've done a few videos on this. This is from the tax office, another warning for business owners. And we're talking about the tax office have now reverted to naming and shaming businesses with tax debt. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get started, there's a disclaimer to make sure you get your own independent advice before you do anything too crazy. And that's me. I'm Derek Nolan. I'm the owner of 12 Chartered Accountants and been doing these videos for a long time now, so make sure you go and check all the other ones out. Now, I did a video a few months ago regarding repayment plans and things like that. Now, the tax office are owed a lot of money and they're getting upset, more upset every day, basically, and they want to find ways to get their money. So in the other video, I talked about, well, if you owe money to the tax office, you basically got three options. The first one is to pay the debt. Now, that's obviously not an option if people are watching this video. The second one is you don't pay the debt, and you can see what the consequences are. We'll go through that in a minute. Or the third thing is to go into a debt repayment plan. Now, I've done a video on debt repayment plans and what you should do, and a number of years ago I actually did a video on what you should do when you do owe money to the tax office. So if you haven't seen those ones, make sure you go and watch those ones as well. Any repayment plan or any money that you owe to the tax office attracts an ATO general interest charge, which is currently 11.34%. So it becomes quite an expensive form of debt. Now, if you owe money to the tax office, well, you basically have the tax office has four options. And we've been through these in the past. The first one is the director penalty notices. I did a video on this a year or two ago when I started seeing a lot of clients starting to receive these director penalty notices. So what that is, that if you owe tax, well, if your company owes tax to the tax office, your company or your trust, that debt belongs to your company or the trust. What the tax office were doing, that they could make that debt become your problem by issuing a director penalty notice. And there's a time period where I think it's 21 days when you get the notice to do something about it. Otherwise, that debt becomes the directors of the company's problem. So I've done plenty of videos on that in the past. And the tax office, 2 or 3 years ago, were issuing a lot of director penalty notices. The other thing I started seeing recently is garnishing of bank accounts. So this is when the tax office have the right, if you owe money to the tax office, just to go to your bank and say, bank, the tax office is owed money from this client. We would like that money now. Now, there are some restrictions. I think it's 30% of the balance of the bank account. So if you owe $100,000 to the tax office and you've got $100,000 in your bank account, the most they can take is $30,000 that day. I've done videos on the garnishing of bank accounts as well. The tax office has been doing that fairly regularly as well. The third option is this name and shame. This is when the tax office start reporting your debt to credit bureaus. Now, I've talked about in my other videos about this option, but I hadn't really seen the tax office do it until now. In the last couple of months, I've had 2 clients have received these name and shame letters, and pretty much they're fairly severe. I'll go through this video about what happens in that process and what you should do about it. And the fourth option, I haven't seen this for a long time, is when the tax office do a creditors winding up. And really that is the last resort. Now, I haven't seen this for many, many years, but as you can see, option 1 they've tried, option 2 they've tried, option 3 they're just starting to try now. So, and that seems to be working quite well. So who knows if they ever get to option number 4. We'll might have to do a video on that later on. So we're going to talk about this name and shaming today and what that's all about. So the tax office have now decided to start reporting businesses to these credit bureaus or credit agencies if the tax office has a large debt. And I'll go through what the limits are on that in a second. And these credit reporting agencies, well, you've probably heard of them. Like it's if you have a credit history or anything like that, particularly a bad credit history, these credit agencies track that. So sometimes on a personal level, if you've been applying for lots of loans or you've defaulted on credit cards and things like that, that doesn't look good on your credit rating. But companies and businesses also have a credit history as well. And that's what these credit bureaus or agencies do. They keep a track of all these sort of credit history. Now, there is limits on who can access this information. Insurance companies, banks, obviously the tax office, and other lending facilities. It's not just the everyday person can sort of go to a credit bureau and access this information. You do it for your own credit history, but you can't do it for other people unless you're a certain sort of level of qualification or something like that. So basically, it's all about the level of credit that you will be extended. So if you're borrowing money, that's a type of credit. But what we talk about is that if you are in business and you're buying things from your suppliers, most of the time they give you terms, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, sometimes 60 days to pay that invoice. So in a way, you're actually borrowing money from your supplier because you're getting those goods and you're paying them on your terms. So that's what this is all about, is that the credit bureaus are there to provide this information to your suppliers on what your ability to repay these debts are. There's some registered credit reporting bureaus in Australia. Just a few names. I just sort of got those off the tax office website. There's probably other ones. You've probably never heard of those. There's one there, Credit Watch. I have heard of those ones, and I did research a little bit of information that they had available. Now, why don't you want to be on one of these credit watch lists? Well, it's fairly obvious if you've got a bad rating. Now, people can be on those lists if you've got a good rating, but it's all about having a bad rating and not being on there. So what you'll find, if you happen to appear on a credit watch list because you've defaulted or on a repayment plan or a credit card or just any loan or anything like that, that's a bad thing. Because if you do have a loan, your business has a loan with a company or a bank or a finance or anything like that, if you read the fine print, a lot of these banks or credit agents or credit companies can all of a sudden, or if you go on this credit list or you default on someone else's loan, therefore you default on this loan, and they can ask you to pay the debt in full. So that's not a good thing to have. The other thing, if you're on one of these credit watch lists, it's almost impossible to get any new finance. So if you try and lease a car or even just go and rent some office space somewhere like that, and you're on a credit watch, you're not going to get those things, because what you find is these credit bureaus offer this information for a fee to anyone who is able to access the information. And that's what they're doing. They're checking these lists all the time. Another thing I've noticed was that your insurance premiums, particularly your business insurance, will be a lot higher if you're on these credit lists. And the fourth one, which is probably the most important thing, is the suppliers will now want payment up front. So like I said, if you've got a supplier and he's providing you steel or bricks or stock or anything like that, and normally they give you 30 days, maybe even 60 days credit to pay your invoice, they won't do that anymore. They'll say, sorry, if you want any more stuff delivered, we want cash up front. And also, those other invoices that are currently outstanding, until they're paid, we're not giving you anything else. So as you can see, this can be devastating for any business, because a lot of businesses work on credit as well. So I'll invoice my clients, hopefully get paid 7 days, 14 days, things like that. So I'm providing credit to some of my customers. So therefore, it's sort of a whole chain reaction. If all of a sudden I don't get paid, I'm not going to pay my suppliers and things like that. So this is what I found when people get named and shamed by anyone, mainly the tax office. The suppliers now find out about it, and pretty much they won't provide any credit anymore. So that's why you don't want to be on one of those lists. Now, this is the important part. When will the tax office disclose your business to the credit bureaus? And they made it fairly clear. If the total ATO debt exceeds $100,000, so you might have $50,000 owes on your income tax account and $50,000 on your integrated client account or your BAS account. They add them together. So if the total debt for that entity exceeds $100,000 and the debt is more than 90 days overdue, the tax office will very likely now report you to the credit agencies. So that's the line in the sand. Now, I read a bit of correspondence from the tax office recently, and they have said, all right, well, what they're going to do, sure, if you've got $100,000 worth of debt and it's more than 90 days, what they're still going to do though, they'll report you if you fail to respond to 2 outreach attempts. Now, what the tax office mean by an outreach attempt is like a phone call or a letter. Like they've actually reached out to you to say, listen, we would like this debt paid. Normally, the first one's fairly friendly. You might have overlooked it or something like that. But any letter that you or your tax agent receives regarding the outstanding debt is treated as one attempt or one outreach attempt. So this is something that you probably don't even realize because the tax office ring your tax agent. So we probably get 10 phone calls a day from the tax office. 9 of those would be the tax office chasing money. So now we understand that, well, hang on, this is a bit more important because that counts as one. They might not have reached out to you straight away, but reaching out to the tax agent is counted as one. So 2 outreach attempts, or you receive a notice of disclosure. We'll go through a second what a notice of disclosure will look like. So the criteria is you need to have $100,000 in total debt to the tax office, and that debt is more than 90 days old. Then, in addition to that, the tax office need to have tried to get you to respond, either by their phone calls or letters to you, or you've received this notice of disclosure, which I'll go through in a sec. So what this notice of disclosure is basically it's another letter from the tax office, basically saying that if you do not pay this money, we will send your information to the credit bureaus. That's pretty much it. And they basically say, we've tried to get the information or the money from you. You've tried to avoid paying and all those other things. But basically once you get this notice, you've got 28 days from receiving the notice to take necessary action. Those necessary actions are usually pay the debt in full or go into a repayment plan. So if you get one of these letters, don't throw it in the bin. A lot of people, I think since the last 3 or 4 years, have got a bit complacent. They get letters from the tax office. The tax office tried color coding letters, like there used to be blue ones, followed by yellow ones, followed by red ones, to try and get people, and they used to try different headings and things like that, to the point where people were getting one of these every day or every week, and they're sort of just throwing in the bin. So the tax office saying, well, no, these letters now count towards an outreach. So, and particularly if when you get this notice to disclose, definitely do something about it. It's like when I say to people, if they get a director penalty notice, ring me straight away. If they're a client of mine, I don't care what time of day it is, just ring me because I've only got 21 days to do something about that debt. These letters or notices of intent to disclose, you've got 28 days. So again, if you get one of those, ring me because we've got to do something about it. Because with the director penalty notice, some people go, well, that's fine, Derek. They can make my debt, but I'm going to pay it. That's fine over time and stuff like that. It doesn't really affect your business, but this does. If all of a sudden your company goes on one of these credit watch lists or something like that, and your suppliers aren't providing you credit anymore, that's the end of your business. That's the end of the game. I've had a few clients receive these letters recently, and they found it really tough to move forward. This is actually what a letter from the tax office says when they actually have decided now to report you to the credit bureau. So this one here, I've just deleted all the important information, but who the client is, but your tax debt has been reported to credit reporting bureau. So once you get this letter, it's too late. Pretty much you've got this 2 or 3 days after it was actually reported to the credit bureaus. So once you get this letter, pretty much it's all over. Now the tax office says they will remove you from the credit reporting when you've paid the debt. So it's not one of those things that once you're on the list, the tax office say, listen, this money's owed, and they let the credit bureaus know about it. You're on the list, you never come off it. I know an ex-partner of mine had a photocopy that he defaulted on in the office or something like that. And even though it was all sorted out and stuff like that, that was on his credit history for 10 years later. Every time he went to try and get a car loan or something like that, the photocopier thing came up. So pay the debt, or at least enter into a repayment arrangement. So the tax office even say, listen, you don't need to pay in full. Go into a payment arrangement and we'll take it off. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get some action from you because they've found that the director penalty notices weren't really working. They're finding that the bank garnishes probably weren't working either because you're making sure there's no money in the bank account, things like that. This one is working. They've found out that this actually has a very significant effect on a business. So all of a sudden, it's starting to work. So my prediction is we're going to see more and more of this one. So just be ready for it, that's all. So if you go into a repayment plan, they do then notify the bureaus to take it off the list. Now, what I'm saying though, is the ATO may forget about it or take it off the list, but suppliers won't. So if you're on that list and a supplier sees, oh, hang on, geez, this company is on the list, I better get cash on delivery, and then they check again a week later and you're off it, good luck with trying to get some credit terms back with that company. You may have to go and find another supplier and things like that. So even though you might be off the list, you're not sort of out of the woods yet. Now, having said that though, going to a payment arrangement is probably the way out in this situation. But I did a video a few months ago on payment plans and going into payment plans with the tax office and what that might actually mean to you and your company if you're trading insolvent. So if you haven't watched that video, make sure you go back and watch that video as well, particularly if you got to this point where the only way forward is to go into a repayment plan. And don't wait for the letter from the tax office saying you've been reported to a credit bureau to go into a repayment plan. Now, what this tax office are saying is that they still need at least 5% up front, and then the payments over the maximum of like 80 weeks, which is like a year and a half. And you still need to make sure that you pay all your future obligations on time and things like that. But watch the video on going to repayment plans and how important that is. This is some really information. I looked up the Creditor Watch, which is one of the bureaus. And this is what they had. They said private businesses have collapsed. 33.6% of private businesses have collapsed over the last 12 months after being referred to Creditor Watch. So a third of all businesses. So basically what they're saying is that if you're owe more than $100,000, gone through the whole process, and you get put on this list, the chances of you surviving are now fairly low. What they're saying is even though from their own data, over a third of businesses going to voluntary bankruptcy. That's it, because they can't trade anymore. So so you don't want to get there. You don't want part of those statistics. And this is what Credit Watch also said at the end of November. They had 28,700 tax debt defaults on their books. And of that, 18,319 were private companies. The other ones were probably individuals and obviously larger public companies and stuff like that. But the vast majority were small private companies. So if you do the numbers, 33% of those 18,000 are probably not going to be in business in the next 12 months. Anyhow, that was the word of warning for today. I just thought I just happened to see a lot more of the tax office making a lot more noise regarding this. I had a couple of clients myself get added to these credit bureaus. So I just want to do a word of warning to everyone else. Okay, that's where I'm going to finish it. So make sure you haven't watched my other videos. Go to my website, www.12.com.au or YouTube, where you watch this one and see all the other ones, mainly small business owners and things like that. But I've done plenty of videos over the last 7 or 8 years. There's my website, 12.com.au. All right, well, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now.